It is my pleasure to welcome our speaker today, Bob Hertzberg, our California State Senator. Let me tell you a little bit about him. After serving in the California Assembly from 1996 to 2002, including 2 years as Speaker, Bob Hertzberg returned to elected office in November 2014 after 12 years as a leader in private business and public policy. Among his accomplishments, he built an international renewable energy business, which I'm very interested in hearing about, invested in solar, wind, and electric car projects, and worked for structural changes in government through two civic groups, California Forward and the Think Long Committee of California. Hertzberg chairs the Senate Governance and Finance Committee and represents nearly 1 million San Fernando Valley residents of Senate District 18, which includes many of the communities in the greater San Fernando Valley, including Burbank, parts of Burbank, and the following communities in Los Angeles: Arleta, Granada Hills, Hanson Dam, Lakeview Terrace, Mission Hills, North Hollywood, part of Northridge, Pacoima, Panorama City, Sherman Oaks, Studio City, part of Sun Valley, Sylmar, Toluca Lake, Valley Glen, Valley Village, Van Nuys, the city of San Fernando, which isn't in LA, as I recall, is it?
Shepherd City.
Yeah, and Universal City.
Half county, half city.
Half county, half city. Okay, so it is my pleasure now to welcome our guest speaker today, Senator Bob Hertzberg. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I guess I gotta not move around too much because you want to get this on film for the people that moved last time. But let me just start out on a personal note, everybody. Thanks for volunteering. Thanks for making the community good. Thanks for thinking of all the stuff that you do. Rotary is a great place, and it's all about service to others, you know. And just want to acknowledge that. No one's getting paid here. Everybody's putting their time here. We're on a Sunday. We're working, and everybody's out helping the common good, and that's the only way we all move forward. So I just want to personally thank everybody for that. It's a big deal because it forms the foundation of why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I have to be completely nuts to go back into government. And I am a little nuts. I'm okay with that. Because I was gone for 12 years. I represented the Valley, and we did great things, just great stuff, basic stuff from planting trees on Ventura to putting sound walls in, to putting the Orange Line in, just delivered big time. Rarely, I don't ever recall actually doing a press conference because that's not how I do government. I just get it done, and it's my job, and I felt like a son of a gun for the folks that I represent. That's my job. So what happened was, quite frankly, you know, I was in government last time during the energy crisis. I was there during 9/11 and the chaos of that, and we got a lot done. We got a really lot done. We did stuff for, you know, we did the school bond stuff that built all the new buildings at Pierce and at Valley and at Mission and at Northridge. We did just, I mean, it was great stuff. Again, I never talked about it, but got it done. Those were my bond issues that put the money on the ballot. That was our $50 million that I got dedicated to the Performing Arts Center, which was the first money necessary to bring a world-class Performing Arts Center. I was there some weeks ago with Yo-Yo Ma, if anybody was there, but it was pretty cool. And, you know, worked it pretty hard. And as I traveled the world, what I learned was this. I went to, I guess, 100 countries. I don't know, a lot of places. But what I came away, and the reason why I decided to come back into government, anybody remember the book from school called Plato's Republic? Mm-hmm. Remember the story behind Plato's Republic where you get out there, the theory behind Plato's Republic was that you go out, you raise your family, you do your business, you do everything in life, and then you divest yourself of everything and you come back in and you do the common good. Is kind of the notion of benevolent dictatorship. Dictatorship stuff I don't like, but the benevolent side is important. And so what happened was, as I was traveling around the world, I never lost my interest in public service. I've been doing this now for 42 years. You know, helping and the like. My kids are older, doing really, really well. And while I was doing my renewable stuff and energy stuff, and a factory in Wales, factory in South LA, businesses in China, all over the world, I saw the dynamic energy that California possesses. Immigration is not just about Spanish speakers. It's Tagalog speakers and Hindi speakers and Swahili speakers. You're talking about doing a project in Africa. It's all over the world, and there's a magic about this place. You know, do we have a lot of challenges? Sure. Do a lot of people bellyache about a lot of problems that are happening? Yeah. But when you look at the rest of the world and you look at how well we've done, it's pretty staggering. And so, in addition to all the work I did in the business world and the like, as Linda said, I did these other reform groups, and we did stuff that I think were very, very important, none of which ever makes the front page of the paper, none of which anybody really is interested in, all of which, from my experience in government, is fundamental to making government work better. Redistricting, getting the politics out of redistricting. Because quite frankly, redistricting wasn't about partisanship. It was about incumbency protection, the ugly side of incumbency protection, because I'm the last person to do it when I was Speaker. And let me tell you, it was really ugly. And it motivated me to do the Citizens Commission, where we have a nonpartisan Citizens Commission. The outcome of that has been more of one party versus the other, but what we've really seen is not this stupid incumbency where you don't want this person or that person in the games that get played in the districts that look like they're, you know, made of chopped liver or whatever it is. 50% plus one on the budget. I worked hard in 37 editorial boards around the state. Why was that important? Most people see that through a partisan lens. I don't. I see it through an international lens. I remember being in the UK and seeing the Financial Times or the China Daily or in Copenhagen. You know, what's the paper in Copenhagen?
Sorry?
What's the newspaper in Copenhagen?
Politiken.
Politiken? And I'd see these horrible stories about California when we had these budget delays. The truth, I've done 11 budgets now. The truth of the matter on these budgets with all this stuff, it only affects poor people. It only affects people that need governmental services. I never was affected by a downturn in the budget. People that are development disabled, the not-for-profits that get contracts, or whatever the case may be. And what always ends up happening in these budget delays is it ends up costing 35 cents, by orders of magnitude, I'm just metaphorically speaking, to solve the problem. But you wait 90 days and you're killing the California brand. So 47 other states now, with us 48 states and the federal government, pass a budget on simple majority. It's ridiculous, the game. So we did that. We did open primary to hopefully take some of the partisanship out of the process, and term limits to give a longer term think. And what I did last year, working very hard, was before I came into government, was initiative reform. And you're going to see this next ballot some very significant changes on initiative reform, where initially initiatives were used to reform the corruption in government, and now they're used as a tool to create corruption in government, because a handful of people write very big checks and try to manipulate their game one way or the other. It's exactly opposite of what happened 100 years ago and during the reform era, and why we ended up having it. That to me formed the foundation of why I came back in, because I think there's an opportunity, partly because of the economic upturn a little bit. Last time I was in government, we had a lot of money. I left, it went in the toilet. Now I'm going back. I came back in, it's on the uptick again. Just saying. And so I just think there's a real opportunity to do stuff, and kind of along the lines of the Think Long Committee, that's what I'm doing. I mean, the first thing that I did was the dumbest thing any person who wants to have a political career does. Talk about taxes. My very first day back in the Senate. Why? Because if we don't fix the volatility, if we don't restructure how the government works in terms of money, it's the next big move. This stuff, we're just joking, we're just wasting time. It's ballot box budgeting, it's everybody fighting for a little piece of cheese, and we get horrible, horrible outcomes. So I'm working on the long stuff. I'm working on a bunch of water stuff, not legislatively, but in the context of, but in the context of some really interesting stuff, because I've worked on water since I was a kid in college. I wrote my dissertation on it. I'm working on stuff on energy in a really, really cool way that again, not the kind of fancy stuff. I'm not chasing that stuff, the press headlines. I'm trying to work on voter participation. If you followed, some of that's been a little bit in the press. But it's really important, because our turnouts are just, we don't have a democracy anymore. It's embarrassing, quite frankly, to see what these turnouts are. I just wonder, you know, it makes my heart bleed. And so we're going to have if the governor signs this, we're going to have 14 days to vote. So you're not going to just wait on some day that happens to be a gotcha day, your kids are sick, or your car breaks down, or you can't make it, or you're late at work. You're going to have 14 days to vote. It's going to change, like we see around the world. In Costa Rica, you know, all around the world, you see all these different, Nicaragua has that. It's against the law not to vote in Australia. but to really change the game. It's not going to motivate people, but at least it removes some of the barriers that we often find as excuses, and hopefully gives an opportunity for people participating to get people in the game. I'm working on the court system, the judicial branch. Again, a place where nobody has any interest in the court system because judges don't make contributions, criminals don't vote because they take away their rights when they get a felony to vote, but it's so fundamental to the working of democracy. I've started out with this, I don't know if you followed this at all, but there's been a little bit of press on this. I haven't done anything, just all in the natural. Well, we have a traffic ticket system. What happened, and I got to tell you, I'm not some clean gene on this. When I was in the legislature and chairing the Public Safety Committee almost 20 years ago, we used to go when the judicial branch of government would come in and we'd say, well, you can just add fees to the tickets. You can add, all these other costs to the tickets, and in order to pay for the cost of the judicial, you can add this. Well, the reality was you took a ticket that was $25, and by the time someone paid it, it was $380. $380 to someone, it might as well be $380 million. If you got to buy food for your kids and pay rent, it don't matter. And then what happens is we're so smart in this great government. First of all, we don't collect any of it because no one has any money, in terms of where we are. So now we have a $10 billion deficit of money and fees we're supposed to collect. By the way, that's like 12-year backlog of penalties and assessments. And then we say, okay, well, if you don't pay it, we're gonna take away your license. 4.8 million people, we took away their license. We get out there, we talk about people out there driving without driver's license because they don't have legal status. Well, they drive without a license and they get to work because they got a $1.50 fine someplace that turned into losing their license. Because if you don't appear in court, you lose your license, right? So we started that. I got the governor to add it to as what's called a trailer bill to the budget. So effective October 1st, we're going to amnesty program. Poor people are going to have to pay 20% of the numbers, other people 50%, and they're going to pay it down on a payment plan. And as soon as you sign up for the payment plan, you get your license back. So we get people with licenses back on the street with insurance and the like. And now I'm working with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and next week I've modified my bill because I already got the governor to put it in the budget. And I'm now going to say, okay, under the old rule, if you want to go to court, you have to pay the fine first. So let's see, access to justice and democracy because the cop was wrong or because something was wrong or the facts were wrong requires me to put the money up. I can't afford it, I don't have access. We're going to fix that. I've modified my bill to do that. So those are things that on the surface in terms of people's lives on a day-to-day basis, they're huge. They're huge. When you have 4.8 million people, that's like 12% of the state of California losing their licenses. I'm getting the numbers of how many people in the San Fernando Valley have lost their license and what impact we're going to have on them. So I've been able to do those kinds of things that again, they're not the things that people contribute to politically, but I'm past that. This is Plato's Republic for me. I came back, my kids are doing great, everything in life's great, to do the tough stuff, to do the stuff that nobody else does in a very big way, and quite frankly, to do what I did before, is fight for the Valley. You haven't seen this publicly yet, but you're going to see this. I don't know if you remember, I got the money for the Orange Line last time. I did that in about a 5-minute conversation with the governor. I got the cash and we put it in, cash. Well, so this time we don't need cash, so I'm a creative fellow, and so under we passed a couple years ago what was called Proposition 2. Proposition 2 is a rainy day fund, so that we have to continue as we have this volatile system, put money in the rainy day fund. If things go down, we have cash. But what we did for the rainy day fund is we did two things. You could put cash in, 50%, or you can pay down debt, 50%. So what did we do? We paid down $90 million of debt at the MTA, so we have a headroom space of $90 million to extend our San Fernando Valley transportation system. No one saw that. I never talked about it publicly, but you're going to start seeing that come. It's $90 million to the Valley at a time when no one got any money. Pretty good. I feel pretty good about that. But, I know how to do this stuff because I've been doing it for so long. And and how to work it and things like that. So I've been working hard. I got 8 years in the deal. So this said, he explained what the district is and the like. And so, I don't know if you remember, I used to live on Chandler. I sold that house and moved to, it's being sold now, I should say. And I moved up the street off of Langdon in Van Nuys, bought a house in Sacramento. Use my time in Sacramento. Don't go out to all these events in Sacramento like everybody else does, to all the fancy events and stuff. I just invite people to my house. I've had 86 members of the legislature of both houses and both parties at my place because I'm trying to create a different culture. I'm trying to create a culture where people talk and people think and try to bring people with ideas to come in and try to figure it out. The government at old times historically, now and in the past, there's no great difference now. It has always been a place where the status quo, where the powerful have the ability to manipulate the system to get what they want. We saw it with the railroads 100 years ago. We've seen it in so many different contexts, right? And if you look at Sacramento, the only people who have money to be able to go there and advocate their points of view are the people who are fighting for the status quo, right? I call them the bellyachers of the status quo, folks that you know, the telegraph industry or the Pony Express. They're all looking backwards, and there's very little constituency for the future, and that's what I'm trying to offer: creative approach, someone who has a global view, and you know, be a warrior for the valley and fighting like a son of a gun and having a good time doing it under my own rules in a very, very, very different way than what I did in the past, although it was pretty fun last time. This is not, you know, it's not as many people as I hang out with, but I really try to really do the homework and do it differently. So I came in, I really believe the Senate is a place, or the legislature is a place that doesn't have a lot of press stories, but quite frankly, it's where the power is. Washington, D.C., in my judgment, is shut down dramatically, and I would argue that it's not shut down because of partisanship. I would suggest that partisanship is the byproduct of the problem, where it's just too hard to organize on such a big grand scale with everybody having power, with all the games that get played, globalization, how the world works. So Washington is, I think locally, at the city of Los Angeles level, there's quite important decisions, but by and large, most of the power rests in the states. That's what the Constitution did when it was created. It gave us the power in the states. 73% of all local money comes from state money. So if you really, so the thing about the state that's an interesting place to be is that generally it really is the place where the power is. You just exercise power in a wholesale manner. I'm not doing ribbon cuttings. I'm not doing press conferences. No one knows that I did $113 billion of school development when I served in government, but you know, honestly, it's okay. To me, it's the right way to do stuff. And so that's why I went back to the state as opposed to going to the city or going to the county. You know, it really is the broader policy. And the thing I'll close on this is just, you know, my broader objective in all of this ultimately is to devolve power, to bring government closer to the people. I think when government is, whether it's in Washington or Sacramento or on the moon, people don't see that they get value. When you see stuff in your backyard, you see a school being built, a senior citizen center being built, stuff being done, people have more confidence and feel that their money's being spent more wisely, and I think that's an important thing. And I think it's an important thing in terms of how to make speed to market in this globalizing economy and how to make the place work better. So I'm a serious student of this stuff. I'm taking it in a very serious way. In our district office, you should come by. If you haven't, anybody been there yet so far in the office? It's on East Red Street, Van Nuys, on Van Nuys Boulevard, 6250. It's in the state building, the top floor.
6150.
6150.
Okay, I would have gone a little bit far.
Okay. They would have directed you.
You didn't want me to go.
But we have, what, 38 interns there so far. We've built it out like a Google office with colors and all kinds of fun stuff. If you know Dave Fleming, who's been a part of the Valley for so long, obviously you know Miss Fernando Award winner, but Mr. Fleming now works for me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I have him on the payroll. I offered him a job at $1 a year, and the state said, no, we can't do that. We got to give you $2 a month. So the first thing he gets is a $2,300 pay increase, a 2,300% pay increase. So he went downtown to go to those ethics trainings, and he said it cost him 4.5 months of salary to pay for parking. But he's a senior guy. I've got tons of kids in there doing all kinds of fun projects for the Valley. Last time when I served, I had 800 interns over the years. This time I want to have over 1,000 to 1,200 kids in the campaign. Get them engaged, give them opportunities. The stories that I hear from all these young guys and girls who've been to the office and how inspired them to get involved and do service in one form or another has been pretty cool. So I built out this really, really cool office. You got to come by and see it. You got 6 conference rooms. I use it for the community service and all kinds of stuff. If you want to have meetings there, it's can't be nonpartisan, but you guys are by definition nonpartisan, so not political. You certainly can use it. It's a great, great, great place. And there's a lot of kids, and it's a lot of energy, and it has a lot of pictures of the old history of the valley married with the modern. I wanted to train these kids to respect the valley. So you come in, I get this great picture that mimics the Hollywood sign that says the San Fernando Valley, and then I had an artist come in and paint it above Mr. Fleming's office. He's got an office bigger than he had later in Watkins. I had painted above it Mr. San Fernando Valley.
Yeah.
You know, I've got the Isaac Van Nuys classroom. I've got the Pio Pico room. I've got the Bruce Ackerman room in honor of Mr. Ackerman and his contributions to the valley. You know, I have the William Mulholland room, which is my office. So it's a lot of fun. And everybody met Mark, who works for me. He used to work for me for many, many years before I was in government. And so he can take me because he used to work for Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger. So I'm easy compared to those two guys. Not much, but I'm easy. So that's kind of it. I just wanted to, you know, come by. I said I would come by, and I'll be back. I'm around. I'm doing stuff in a very different way. I'm not running around and going to all those fancy events like the young whippersnappers do. It's not my thing. I stay in the valley. I do stuff for the valley. This is my peeps. This is the peeps I take care of. Everybody got me elected, and my job is to take care of the community in an elegant way and offer, you know, as best I can, a vision for this place. And have the guts to take the vision, and guess what? I'll be wrong, and you course correct. And you course correct, and you figure out how to make it, and you course correct again. You jump out of buildings, you break your legs, you fix it, you get back up, you do it again. I made a lot of mistakes, and I'm going to make a lot more. But, you know, my biggest problem with so many people in politics, the youngins, and I was a youngin one day, is that, you know, they're so focused on their career, they miss the underlying purpose of the work, which is the work. So what happens is there's always this contradiction in politics, and I see it all the time, and everybody sees it. So when you talk to a politician and you say, oh, this one's authentic versus not, because they're calculating all the time. Well, someone wants this. Is they going to help me for my race? Is it going to help me? Is it going to hurt me? How does this get me to the next move? Oh, God, if I don't help this group over there, they're going to be mad at me, and then they're going to go against me, and I want to move up to this office. I want to move up to that office. It's part of politics. I'm not naive about it. I'm not suggesting it. My only advice to the younger generation is to just work hard and do the work. And when you do the work, it speaks for itself. People know. When I ran for mayor of Los Angeles, I had no institutional support. None of the traditional players. Nobody. Not a single endorsement. And I came within 1,500 votes of getting the runoff. And I had people like Dick Reardon and all kinds of people as my co-chairs, Dave Fleming and others, because they saw me work versus leveraging the interest groups, playing one versus the other. And I just think that's a more intelligent way to get stuff done, because if you don't move forward, you still solve the problem, right? You're serving both masters. I'm not suggesting that young politicians should not be ambitious, but they should be ambitious to achieve deliverables as they're moving through the process. So, you know, I got 8 years in this job. The term limit law is 12 years, but I actually worked on that. It was one of the things I did at California Forward. And the way we wrote it was, if you serve before, you go the old rules. You haven't served, you get new rules. And the reason is because if you remember, we had these before where it looks like they're self-dealing by politicians. And the last thing I wanted to do was look like self-dealing. So I'm 8 years, which is fine. I'm 60. I'll be 68 when I get out. It's plenty of time to do a lot of good work and, you know, have a fun time doing it. And if I blow up in the process because I failed, then I'll get back up and try it. And if it doesn't work, maybe I can help educate the next generation to give it a shot. So happy to answer any questions, and I thank you for the invitation to be here. Thank you again for your good work.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Questions?
What do you see as transportation improvements in the valley that you might want to allocate those funds?
Well, that's going to be the extension of the. I mean, look, I put the $100 million in and it got taken out when the budget went down for Van Nuys Boulevard, you know, the north-south route. But there's going to be a north-south route at the end of the valley. You know, there's some discussion of going steel wheels to take out the tires. I put the tires in. That was my deal instead of the steel wheels or subways, because it never would have happened. You saw it's been wildly successful. Now there's efforts to say, oh, we're not getting respect, so we should put in, you know, light rail. It's really about this. Apparently, the north-south route that they're talking about in the end of the valley, at the end of the orange line, where the money would go, and that's about how much they need for it.
Chris, I see something maybe down from Van Owen to go east and west. I mean, that's.
Well, when we were there, Dave Fleming and Dave was on some board, transportation thing I did. We put $7 million in it. We synchronized the lights along Victory. If you travel Victory and you hit those lights properly, you'll never get a red light.
Yeah.
It cost $7 million. But we did that when I was there quietly, no press conferences, but just did it. That was pretty good. But so that was the purpose of doing that. I think, look, honestly, you guys are going to think I'm nuts, but it's just like the Grameen Bank, right? Look at this, okay? We have all these structures and rules about banking. This is a wonderful, wonderful example of these kind of micro banking. All these rules about you have to have all the paperwork and you have to have all the stuff right and you have to have your tax returns. And so we determined that paperwork was the determination as to whether someone would repay their debt. And what we learned was social relationships, women running the money, right? They pay back their debt. It's a whole different thing. There's no security. There's none of that stuff, right? So the point, what I'm trying to say to you is lots of times things that we did, we get it wrong. And I think what you're going to see in transportation, and you guys can say, Hertzberg, you're nuts, but, you know, go tell everybody some nuts that you got this thing. Remember Dick Tracy when we were kids? This thing's got much better than what Dick Tracy had, right? You know, we all thought that was the future. Go look at what's that television show? Star Trek, the communicator, right? That thing looks like an old clunker compared to what we got today. You know? Yeah, there you go. There you go. Thank you, Spock. And so the point is that I think you're going to see this whole driverless car thing going to be a big deal. When you analyze transportation, what happened during the Olympics? Okay? Tom Bradley did 3 things during the Olympics. And I only share this in terms of it helps demonstrate my point. 1, he put 550 buses on the system. 2, they had all the deliveries for trucks to like the Safeway and Ralph's and stuff, nighttime delivery, so they weren't disrupting the system. And 3, the traffic was, the number of cars on the road was reduced by 3%. Traffic, if you think about how it works, I don't know if anybody's ever studied Bob Moses back east and the big developer of developing all the roads and stuff, but traffic is a human problem in 2 respects. We've built multi-billion-dollar deals, $3.2 billion widening the freeway, right? Still a lot of traffic. Because it's people's patterns. Think about this. I'm not suggesting this for the truth of the matter asserted, just for the absurdity of making the point. If schools started at midnight and went until 5 in the morning, there'd be no traffic. All those buses and all the mothers and everybody and fathers taking their kids to school would be off the system, right? If half the businesses worked, it's like having a restaurant that's open 4 hours a day. The other 20 hours, it's just sitting there and it's an asset not being used. Well, on the highways, what happens is everybody gets on, the rubbernecking, all that stuff. If you actually have electronic devices, which I think you're going to have very shortly, it's going to go like son of a gun. The world's changing at such a breakneck speed. It's going to fundamentally change traffic patterns. Instead of calling Uber or a yellow taxi, if that's your deal on these things, you're going to call your car. Take you home. You can pay for a car with yourself or a bunch of people in them at different prices. It'll tell you when the car's downstairs. You won't get on the highway early, and they'll pick you up. All this stuff's in the works. And so I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen, and you're going to see the same thing with buses and all kinds of things, where the electronics are going to fundamentally change that game. And we're not going to have to build so many concrete things that cost so much money and take so much time. I think you're going to see that in the next 10, 15 years. So, I could be wrong, but I think at the end of the day, that's where it's going to go. That's why spending all this money on this big stuff now, we're going to look at it and go, what we were doing, you know? Right? It's like building horse trails, you know? Henry Ford used to say, if you talk to the people about what they wanted, they would tell you they want a faster horse. Because you can't envision the future. You think it's crazy until it happens. I mean, think about this stuff. You can watch movies on this. You watch the news. No one gets newspapers anymore. I mean, it's crazy what's happening to the world. And it's going to increase at just a breakneck speed. So, someone else said I saw. Yeah. You. Go ahead.
Do you have a chance to speak after our meeting about possibly SB 8?
Talk about it now if you want.
I'm concerned about taxing labor. I think it's gonna hurt a lot of people. As far as what people I think are already struggling in our communities, and I think taking a little bit more from them is gonna hurt them more than help.
You ever heard of a paradigm shift? Paradigm shift is a story of the guy who gets on the subway with his 3 kids. And he gets on the subway and he leans back and puts his head back. And the kids are screaming up the top of their lungs, and they're coming up and down, screaming and screaming. And these two ladies sitting across are like looking at themselves, what a horrible father, what a horrible father. Can't he control his kids? This is horrible. And finally they muster up the courage to turn to the guy and say, can't you take care of your kids? Come on, please. And the guy leans forward in a quiet and soft voice and he says, God, I'm so sorry. We just left the hospital where their mother died. Right? They felt pretty bad. All I'm telling you is I'm going to give you a paradigm shift. Because the story about SB 8 is a story of service tax in what's out there. But what you're going to see come down the line is the following in this. You're going to see a tax that that largely, not completely, but largely eliminates the volatility for the ups and downs of the state. And with that money, the new money, you're going to see every corporation, this is not in concrete yet, but this is the current framework on the whiteboard we're working on. Every corporation that makes $1 million or less in adjusted gross income, their corporate tax under this plan, in order to create a structure of government that supports small businesses, because 79% of all businesses in California are 10 employees or less, go from 8.84% to zero. You're going to see people with adjusted gross income of $150,000 on their personal income tax. At a minimum of 5%, their personal income tax goes down, and you're going to see it every 2 weeks in their paycheck. You're going to see people at the bottom of the level change dramatically. You're going to see the idea that people who now come from out of state, because it's a consumption tax, are going to put billions of dollars into the economy, just like hotel tax does. All I'm telling you is, you're not going to tax businesses that have to compete and send stuff out of state. This is George Shultz and Condi Rice and Nobel laureates and political people. This is 5 years in the making. It only came out the way it came out because it did. I'm not out there talking about it in great detail yet because it'll all start unfolding next year. All I want to tell you is this is a bipartisan effort to devolve power locally, to be able to securitize revenue streams so that we can be able to put people to work with construction and stuff, to eliminate the challenges that we're facing at the state university system and the UC system because they're so volatile in terms of how the money works. And who's going to pay the tab? It's people north of $200 and some thousand dollars to $550,000, plus the top people will pay service tax because they buy a lot more services, and the bottom services that we're going to tax, things like no tax on rent, no tax on utilities, no tax on healthcare, no tax on education, stuff that affects people on a day-to-day basis. If you're a Pilates instructor or a coach or whatever, you don't pay a nickel on service tax until you get to $100 grand. And we're working it out on a bipartisan basis with really smart people outside of the government, the best and brightest. If it doesn't work, I won't pursue it. Right now, it's 8 pages of a narrative. So all I would say to you, it's a paradigm shift. Don't take the bait on the notion that, oh, here's government and this liberal lefty guy who's coming in who's just going to add another tax on our system to just add more tax because of the insatiable aspect of government. This is a gigantic restructuring of how the government works in a very thoughtful and grand bargain way. So just, let's sit back and watch it unfold. I'm not suggesting you have the data. You didn't know we just came from the hospital. You don't know what the backstory is. I haven't put it out there, okay? So I don't have a problem when it looks like, oh my God, the sky's falling, the sky's falling. The realtors are coming in, the accountants are coming in, and they just don't know. But that's okay. I'm an old dog. I let them make noise. It doesn't bother me. To me, what's the close looks like? What does a fix look like? Have we solved the problem? That's what I'm focused on. And that's, some time away. Because we're going to see all this other stuff come to fruition. It'll all be in the mix, and I'm hoping to walk up the middle. Am I successful? Maybe. If not, go back to the drawing board. Next case. But it's a really cool deal. I promise you. Just hold on to your horses.
Well, thank you very much.